This question deals with interruptions in meetings. The first thing you have to do is try to preempt the interruption because they can be so off-putting. It undermines your confidence. It creates upheaval in the audience. So avoid at all costs. How do we do that? We'll lay down the ground rules firmly. You're going to have a Q&A. Let them know when the interactions will be happening. Give them an agenda. Do your research on this audience. Make sure you know exactly what they want in as far as you can and exactly where the controversies are. Preempt the controversy by acknowledging it and also discussing with your audience exactly what aspect you're going to cover and not cover. What are you addressing? What are you not addressing? Despite all of that, the real interruption happens anyway because people are disrespectful or simply aren't paying attention. The goal with the interruption is to keep it as short as possible. So number one, try to discourage the interrupter by asking for patience. Number two, remind them of your agenda, remind them of the opportunity to ask the question later on at the end of the meeting. Number three, appeal to their sense of respect for the audience and for the speaker, and the importance that all the information is there so that when the debate happens, everyone can draw upon all the information you've offered. Number four, offer them another source, another channel, another outlet for that discussion, another video, another conference, another speaker you foist them off on. Number five, offer them a meeting after the presentation or at some future date. Again, the important thing is keep the interruption as short as possible and get back on track. I mean, you always have the option of changing your agenda. I always have these off ramps in my presentations so that I can go where the interest is. So you have to very quickly ascertain whether this is a individual interest or a group interest. Maybe you've misread your audience. So have that off ramp. So if you have misread the audience and a lot of people are interested in this, you got to sort of go with that. But again, explain to the audience that you're going to do that, ask for their permission to a certain extent. So those are all the ideas I have. I'd love to hear more of your ideas.
Nerves. What do we do about the nerves? First of all, just know that you are not alone. Everybody who presents has some nerves. It's normal and it's also productive. We do want a little bit of that adrenaline. It helps us get that performance energy that we need because it is a performance. You're in front of people. But we don't want too many nerves because then the nerves themselves get in the way and they can even cause a lot of stress just knowing we're nervous and create a lot of fear about what's going to happen if we're so nervous. So suggestion is for everybody to have some tools to be able to reduce the nerves because you never know when you're going to have more nerves. It can depend on the presentation, or you could be somebody who does experience some extreme nerves. I've seen some really incredible cases where somebody who didn't even have a presentation coming up, just talking about presenting, they had an extreme, almost panic. So it can be strong. It's also something we don't tend to talk about because, well, we don't like to talk about things like that. And we should, because it's a very human response to the challenge of presenting. So first of all, what's happening when we feel those nerves? Well, we are in a state of fight or flight. It's actually fight or flight or freeze, but we normally call it fight or flight. And that is the amygdala is triggering this incredible response with hormones and chemicals, mainly adrenaline and cortisol. When we feel fear, the amygdala takes over, and it's just an incredible process. It's part of our primal brain, our alligator brain, and it's meant to save us from threat to our lives. If we're being attacked by an animal, the adrenaline causes our heart to pump and our pulse races, our legs get tense, and we are ready to spring into action. Now, that's great if you're being attacked by a wild animal, but it's not so great if you're about to present a very important business presentation to a very important crowd of people. That is so not helpful. And the other thing it does is it causes you to have less cognitive function, which is really not helpful if you are presenting. And that is why sometimes when you're nervous, you can't even remember what you're about to do. That's fight or flight. Your brain is trying to help you out here, and it is unfortunately not helping at all. So what do you do? What do you do? Well, the trick is to start early on. Don't start when you feel the nerves, especially the day of, especially the moment of. Some people say, oh, I just don't feel nervous until I'm walking on stage. And I say, well, but the nerves were there. You kind of have to address them, elicit them, draw them out of hiding before the presentation, days before, ideally a week before, and even better yet, a couple of weeks before. And there's an easy way to do that that works just on a physical level, and that's a breathing technique. This is one of many techniques you might use. This is one of the yoga breathing techniques, and it is so effective. And it's called square breathing. Inhale for 2, hold for 2, exhale for 2, hold for 2. That's it. Do that when you feel stressed and before you feel stressed. Do it every day for a week before your presentation. I know it's hard to incorporate these things into our daily lives, but find the time. You don't want to suffer when you are in front of that crowd. Presenting can be hard and challenging, and not everybody loves it, but we don't have to suffer when we're doing it. Start early every day for a couple of minutes and do it for a good 2, 3, 4 minutes. I know it's kind of boring, but it's an investment in your presenting and in your mental health in general. It just turns that nervous energy off, and you start learning what it is to just calm down. I do that one. I do a version of that one. That's the basic version. I do a version where you inhale through the nose for 2, hold for 4, exhale for 6 through the mouth, and then hold at the bottom for 2. And then I increase it as I get more comfortable. You can play with that if you want. The whole idea is to inhale through the nose so you're not taking in as much oxygen, which is the fight or flight response, right? We want more oxygen so we can fight or run like hell. And so we are in fact wanting to release more oxygen as we exhale through the mouth for a longer period. Try that out. It works. 2 other techniques that I've used and love because they're so effective and they're easy to do. And one is emotional freedom technique, EFT. And that's a combination, scientifically proven, it's a combination of acupressure, you tap at specific points, and cognitive behavioral therapy. While you're tapping, you're actually sending a message, you're speaking about the fears for the first part, talk about the fears, so nervous about that presentation. Frank is going to be there and he's expecting a lot. Sheila will be there. She's expecting a lot. I don't want to disappoint them. You get the idea. And I know that sounds kind of out there, but again, many, many, many studies have shown that this works. Why does it work? You're actually reprogramming the amygdala, that it doesn't respond when it hears those thoughts. And then the second part, you do the same tapping with the positive thoughts. The reality is you are prepared. You know your material. You are an expert in the field. You are not going to be attacked by a wild animal. And even if you're not prepared, well, of course, we recommend that you be prepared, but even if you're not prepared, then you would give yourself another positive message, which is, I have my notes. I have my slides. I am safe. This is just your brain being convinced that you are not safe. So make sure you create conditions that give you that safety. Most of that fear comes from the fear of forgetting what you're going to say, the fear of messing up. Make sure you have notes in whatever form you need. Don't go out there without the security of proper notes. And then one last one that focuses purely on the mental, and that's called the work. This is a technique that I've used a lot. You can do it yourself. You can work with a facilitator. There's even a helpline. You can try it out for free. And it is like magic. I can't even understand how it works so well, but it does. You go through this very simple process. It's like a conversation that you have with a facilitator or with yourself, and it just shifts the thinking. You just look at the thought. It's kind of like staring down the tiger. You look at the thoughts squarely and you meditate on them. I am going to fail in this presentation. And you sit there with that thought, and it can bring up stuff. You don't do this 2 seconds before you're going to present. Again, you do this early on, and you'll be amazed when you look at those thoughts, what you discover, that they're not true, that there's another side to it. Powerful stuff. I will leave links below. Just remember that the nerves are just caused by the brain getting overexcited about a perceived fear. You do not have to continue to trigger that response. There's some amazing ways to change that so that you don't have to dread the next presentation. You're going to be presenting for many years, decades to come. There's no reason it can't be a comfortable and eventually even enjoyable process.
We had a number of questions about eye contact, which is, granted, a huge issue for us now that we're online. I advocated for 3 different modes of presentation, which have different ramifications regarding eye contact. The first one I suggested, extemporizing off of notes. You simply write out your notes in very simple form. I have them here on my screen right beneath my camera, or I have them on a piece of paper propped here, or on a card glued to the side of my laptop, or on a monitor right in behind. And then I come to the camera and I elaborate. Then I go to my note again, and then I come to the camera. And that's absolutely acceptable and workable, and lots of interaction with your audience. Second mode of presentation, reading. That's for those presentations where you have a lot of very, very technical information. You've got to be absolutely accurate. Or perhaps you're just nervous about a certain presentation and a certain audience, so you want to read to be absolutely secure. That's fine too. Just set your script up in one-on-one components of information, and you're going to discover that as you're reading, you're going to come to components that you know that you'll be able to pop your eyes up to the camera and speak directly to the camera, that component, and then back into your script. You can get up to 30 or 40% of those lines to the camera, even though you're reading. So it's the best of both worlds. For the broadcast, I chose another mode of presentation, which I like to call homemade teleprompter. I get my text into the middle of my page by broadening the borders on both sides. And then I scroll with one hand, I scroll my text up underneath my camera. For this to work, you have to get the camera and the text very close together. If there's a toolbar in between, which is what happened at the broadcast, then the illusion of always looking at your camera becomes the illusion of never looking at your camera. You appear to not be looking at it at all. So your audience feels closed out, left out. So I'm going to go on working on this until I get that camera and that text close together, but you must eliminate the toolbars, extend the screen to its full capacity, and then I even bring my camera down closer by using tape or hanging it down, experimenting with different ways to get the camera closer. So those are your 3 options, your 3 modes of presentation, and you can mix and match them too, because nothing's saying you have to stick to one for one whole presentation. Do a hybrid version. The important thing, choose the one that's most appropriate for the job you have ahead of you. And we can all look forward to being back to in person, so we don't have to worry about talking to this little black hole any longer. Actually, we'll always be using this because it's becoming quite efficient and it's becoming quite useful. So let us know what your experiences are going forward.
Yeah, this sounds like this could apply to a lot of people, not just young professionals or female or people in a minority group, but anybody who's in a situation where they can feel intimidated, under pressure, feel like they have to prove something. People in the room that have a lot of sway, might have some influence on their career and their development, all those things. So I'm going to address this in a general way about what to do. And it comes down to good speaking skills, really, but they become even more important in a situation like this, when you want to really show strength and confidence and ease, not so easy. There are 4 aspects to this. There's the actual speaking, there's the body language, there is the voice, and the mental skills. I'm just going to touch very lightly on each one. When it comes to the speaking, there's a lot that goes on when it comes to good speaking. But the number one thing, the skill Steve talked about, one-on-one. Every speaker I've ever met could use work on their one-on-one. But when you're in a situation that can be intimidating, even more important. Because when we're stressed and we're trying to prove ourselves, we tend to add a lot of information and go fast, and we pile it on, and we do those run-on sentences. What does that do? It makes us seem disengaged, makes us seem like we're not really solid in our presentation and not solid in our expertise. One-on-one. Now, don't start doing this just in the heat of battle. This takes practice, because you have to think more. You can't just kind of let yourself go. But what it does is it shows that you are thinking. It shows that you're calm, you're in control, and you are delivering exactly what you want to them. It shows real presence. Number 2 is the body language, the movement. When we're nervous, we can either get a lot of movement, a lot of kind of nervous movement. And if you have long hair like I do, there could be a lot of the touching of the hair and just distracted kind of movement. Instead, you want to be calm in your movement. You could be nervous inside, but be calm and stable on the outside. Now, does that mean you don't move at all? No, of course not. I'm moving, but it's the movement that is kind of interfering with my speaking, the constant kind of nervous movement that is actually distracting. Thoughts move me, and that's good. When you have a thought, yeah, let your body move, but then stay stable there while you're speaking. Another thought, another little movement, and then stay there and deliver. If you're in person, you want to change your focus, have one focus, but just stay there. It's going to feel weird because as speakers, we're used to moving around a lot. But wow, does that represent presence and poise? It really gives that impression. And again, it feeds your sense of confidence as well. That's body language. Number 3 is voice. Voice. When we're nervous and trying to prove ourselves, the body does this. The voice gets tight because we just get tense here. So the voice gets kind of small and it gets kind of high and kind of thin. Instead, just be aware. Again, awareness. And you can work on that while you're preparing. Can you just drop this hold here? This hold here. If you're online, actually, one good trick is to lean right against the back of the chair. And even better yet, I have a pillow right in the small of my back and my lumbar spine. And that gives me a good length, but also I can be very calm and relaxed here. So relax the throat, and just allow the voice to be more full. Don't push it down. That's not the idea, but we want to stop pushing it up. I'm letting it just drop down. And speak up. Speak up. When we feel small, we get small and we don't want to make any noise. Speak fully. Speak fully. Again, all these things will feel shocking when you're in that state where you want to get shy, but open yourself up physically, open yourself up vocally, and take that stage. It is a stage. This takes practice. You will get good at this, and eventually how you feel inside will start to match how you're presenting. And then last element, mental skills. I talked about this in another answer. Mental skills, consider, what are you thinking? What are the beliefs that you have? And are they creating a lack of confidence and insecurity, a lack of self-esteem in these situations? Thoughts are powerful things. They change how we feel in situations about ourselves. So consider that. What are those thoughts? What are those feelings that you have? And investigate. And go back to the answer that I gave on stress management and consider exploring some of those tools.
We have a question about whether or not to put speaking notes on slides, and the answer is, my answer is no. Do not clutter your slide up with any information that is not absolutely essential to this audience. So there's a lot more we can do to slides too, aside from get rid of speaking notes. That's the least of our problems. But by all means, keep your speaking notes on a separate cards or a separate monitor or a separate podium somewhere so that you can refer to them quickly. The ideal situation would be, of course, that your slide is your speaking notes and that you can just simply look over your shoulder and pick up your next speaking prompt off the slide. It's the same slide that the audience is looking at, so everyone is together and you're in control of the slide and you're in control of the audience. You're giving them permission to look at the slide when you look at it, and then you're inviting them back to listen to your elaboration. That would be the ideal, but it's not always possible. So when you have a slide that has a lot of information on it, then you should have separate speaking notes. But be sure, even in that instance, that you are always directing and guiding the audience to the slide and back to you very precisely. We're working on this quadrant, this graph, this point, and then give them permission to go to the next one. Always show what you're doing on that slide. But I digress. Back to your question. Yeah, leave the speaking notes off and keep that slide simple.
Indeed, indeed. Training. If you want to be like one of those natural, so-called natural presenters, get some training. The whole idea is to be able to transfer all that good stuff we do when we're in our daily lives and we're talking about something that we're passionate about, we love to share. It's an innately human thing to want to communicate and share. We lose a lot of that in these formal presentations for all kinds of reasons. It's stressful, it's formal, and it becomes serious. High stakes. We're not just having a conversation. We tend to get very unnatural. We don't sound like ourselves. We don't move like ourselves. And then we don't sound quite human either. It doesn't really register with the audience. And just to note that a lot of those so-called natural performers get coaching. Even Obama, who is wonderful, and speakers like him, they have coaches. Yeah, sure. They probably started off with a good base and an ease and some natural ability, but it takes coaching to put that into practice and hone it and deliver a real polished presentation. So indeed, get some training. Of course, we're biased, we're trainers, we love training. We are passionate about learning as much as we are about coaching and helping to develop presenters.
We have a question about speaking in a language, presenting in the language other than your mother tongue. This is a tough one. This is a tough one. first of all, we have to assume that the speech will be written. I don't know how fluent you are in this other language, but it's always best to write down the speech so that you actually are in complete control, because you're going to be nervous as well. And in another language, the language response, the extemporization response is going to be somewhat held back because of that lack of fluency. The other thing is you need a partner, you need a coach for languages. Whenever I've worked in another language, I was a singer in another life and sang in many different languages. And coaches are absolutely essential so that you can understand the rhythm. It's all about the rhythm. Yes, pronunciation, but you've got to get beyond the pronunciation. You must know where the language resolves itself in terms of cadences. You must know where the emphasis is. You must know how to group the words rhythmically. And speaking requires you to actually group the words in such a way that you control the pace as well, because some languages are very fluid and very quick, but Italian, French, Spanish, they have rhythms, but we don't always hear the rhythm because in conversation it's very, very quick. But for presentation, you've got to slow it down, and you need someone to point out to you, where are those groupings? Where are those moments that I can control this? And that's pretty much all I can give you on this one. So good luck, and I hope this helps.
I like this question. I like this question. Do you have to be an actor? Yes and no. The thing about acting is the connotation is being an actor means you're fake, you're pretending. But just think about all the actors that you love. When you watch a great performance, do you say to yourself, wow, they're so fake. They're so fake. They're just pretending. No, no, of course, it's the opposite. We're drawn in by the rawness, the realness, the authenticity of that performance. It moves us. We laugh, we cry. We are viscerally impacted by that. So acting is a good thing. Acting is really about the truth. It's not about faking it. Now, speaking isn't exactly acting for sure. You're not playing a character, you're playing yourself. But the fact is, it's not spontaneous. You're not actually feeling those things in that moment. Even if you do get excited in that moment, it's already stale. That's something you felt when you wrote it weeks ago, or even that morning if you were rushed. But in that moment, you've got a lot of other things going on. The trick to great speaking is to be able to recreate spontaneity. And that's what those great speakers can do. It sounds like they're just speaking to you, saying these things for the first time. There are a lot of parallels then between actor training and speaker training in that sense. We are recreating the spark that made us speak those statements in the first place. And we're feeding off our own energy like a monologue. Is that acting? Is it not acting? It doesn't really matter. All we know is we need to learn how to reignite that spark that made us think and feel something in the first place about our topic.
The question refers to, what does the audience want? And I have to say, this is the fundamental question that every speaker should be asking themselves. That's what it comes down to. I'm only going to offer a few simple things, and they're probably things that you've already thought of and you're probably already doing. So I'm going to endorse them. Number one, survey your audience. Send out a survey. Ask the question. Number two, talk to the organizers. Get precise instructions in terms of what they're bringing you in for and who is there. Send out your spies. Find out who's been there, who's worked with this audience before, how were they received. Do your reconnaissance work, and you will benefit from that tremendously. So that's all I'm going to say about this one. Just get out there and do that preliminary work. Become a private investigator. You've got to, as speakers. Otherwise, it'll be a very unpleasant experience. Check out the answer to interruptions as well, which offered other suggestions in terms of how to change on the fly. Not a fun thing to do, but that sometimes will come up. So good luck.